I could hear the laughter before I even stepped through the arch. It was light at first, giggly, harmless, but as my heels clicked across the marble floor of the wedding venue, it shifted, deeper, harsher, directed, mocking. Someone whispered, "Who comes alone to a wedding like this?" Another added, "That dress. Is she serious?" I kept walking, eyes flicked to me like I didn't belong, like I'd wandered in by mistake. I could feel their gazes crawling up my body, pausing on my shoes, my plain navy dress, the lack of anything sparkly or expensive. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look away, because I knew something they didn't. I paused at the edge of the room, scanning the space like I was measuring it, counting people, exits, expressions. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there for something else. Mira was laughing softly near the center table, arm in arm with her new mother-in-law, who had always hated me. Her voice was sugar-coated, just like always, fake, polite, sharp beneath. The smile. She hadn't seen me yet, but someone else had. An older man, dignified, well-groomed, silent until that moment, rose slowly from his seat near the front row. His eyes locked on mine. His posture shifted, and then he did something no one expected. He walked over to me. The room went silent, utterly silent. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. My sister's new family, the ones still half smirking, suddenly looked like statues. And then he bowed. A deep, deliberate bow. "Miss Lena," he said, his voice like warm gravel, "for someone of your stature to come here unannounced, we are honored." There was a beat of stunned confusion. Then the whispers returned. But they weren't mocking anymore. "She's that Lena? Wait, isn't she the founder of—" "Oh my God, I didn't recognize her." I stood still. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just looked at him and said quietly, "Thank you for your kindness, Uncle Raymond." He straightened, eyes kind. He knew who I was, what I'd done, who I'd become. They didn't, but they would, because I wasn't always this woman, the one people bow to. There was a time they laughed at me. Not behind my back, but straight to my face. There was a time I would have run from a room like this, humiliated, eyes burning, throat closing. I still remember the sting of that day Mira told me I was just jealous. She'd said it so casually, while trying on her first designer outfit, gifted by her fiancé's family. "You wouldn't understand," she added with a little shrug. "This world isn't for people like you." That sentence stayed with me, and she was right. Back then, it wasn't. I didn't have the name, the look, the money, or the pedigree, but I had something else. Silence, grit, memory. I came alone for a reason. No PR team, no camera crew, no headlines to prep the room. I didn't want admiration. I wanted clarity. They needed to see who I became, when no one believed in me, not my friends, not my family, not even Mira, especially Mira. And so I stood, in that golden hall, with chandeliers glittering above me and whispers rippling like storm winds through silk, and I let it all sink in. I scanned the crowd, noticed every flinch, every sudden flicker of recognition, every fake smile beginning to falter. Inside me, there was a storm. But on the outside, I was calm, measuring, watching, because this wasn't the moment they remembered me. This was just the beginning. There's a kind of silence you carry when you've been ignored most of your life. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of invisibility. Growing up, I was the serious one. Always buried in books, always being told to let Mira shine. Mira was the golden child, the pretty one, the lucky one, and I was. Well, I was the one who stayed out of the way. My mother Zara used to say, "A girl's beauty is her biggest strength." She'd brush Mira's hair every morning, humming softly while I packed my own lunch. "Lena's smart," she'd say if anyone asked about me. "She'll be fine on her own." She didn't mean it as a compliment. And my father, Imran, he was always gentle, always watching, but never interfering. He'd look at me sometimes like he wanted to say something, but he never did. When Mira turned 18, they threw her a huge birthday party. Caterers, a rented hall, a professional photographer. When I turned 18, I got a text that said, "Happy birthday, Beta. There's leftover cake in the fridge. That's the difference between us." By the time I was in college, I learned to stop expecting anything. I moved out early, got a scholarship, picked a major nobody understood, operations management. I told people I liked solving problems, but really I liked being useful. I liked disappearing into systems and numbers, places where logic mattered. More than looks. After graduation, I took the first job that would have me. A shipping firm run by a man named Arman Khan. He was demanding, ruthless, and emotionally distant, which made it feel oddly familiar. He taught me everything. And then, one day, without warning, he fired me, said the company was downsizing. I found out later. He gave my role to someone younger, prettier, cheaper. That night, I sat in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by bills and broken expectations, and realized something. No one was coming to save me. So, I saved myself. I took everything I'd learned about logistics, distribution chains, and cost analysis, and I built something. Quietly, in the shadows. A consulting agency, just me and my laptop, working through the night, cold emailing strangers, offering solutions for problems they didn't even know they had. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't loud, but it worked. The clients grew. Then the contracts, then the numbers in my bank account. When I made my first $1 million, no one in my family even knew. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell. Then, a year ago, I got a call from Mira out of nowhere. She sounded cheerful, almost forced. "So guess what?" she said. "I'm getting married. His name's Rehan. He's in finance. His family's, upper crust." I congratulated her. She didn't ask if I'd be part of the wedding. She didn't ask anything. Months passed. No call, no invite, not a single message. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a forwarded email. No subject line, no personal note, just a link to the RSVP page. That's when I realized. I wasn't invited. I was tolerated. It hurt, more than I thought it would. But I didn't delete the email. I bookmarked it. Because something in me shifted that day, not from sadness, but clarity. I knew who Mira was, and who I had become. At dinner, my mother had once said, while spooning rice onto Rehan's plate, "He's perfect for Mira, handsome, educated, comes from a good family." Rehan had chuckled and added, "Well, Mira's perfect too. At least she looks it." No one said anything, but I noticed the way his eyes flicked around the room. Not at Mira, at what was being seen. Rehan didn't love her. He loved the idea of her. That was enough for them. For me, I came to the wedding not to celebrate, but to witness, to look into the eyes of every person who once dismissed me, laughed at me, forgot I existed, and remind them, not through words, not through vengeance, but by existing, fully, quietly, powerfully, because some storms don't rage, they arrive still and change everything. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it shows up in the softest voice, the ones you thought were safest. 6 months before the wedding, I got a call from Aliyah, my former assistant. She'd been with me from the early days, back when I was answering emails at 3 a.m. and sleeping on the floor of my office, loyal, sharp. "Always 2 steps ahead of any mess," she said. "Lena, something's off." I asked what she meant, and she hesitated. Then told me Rehan's company, his so-called boutique finance firm, was under audit. Not public yet, but the rumors were spreading through corporate circles. One of their clients accused them of using insider vendor data for leverage, data that looked a lot like mine. I remember going still, like something cold passed through my body. I asked her, "Are you sure it's my data?" She said she wasn't, but the language, the structure, the pricing models, it all felt too familiar, too specific. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the ceiling for a long time that night. Then I started digging. Zara, my corporate investigator, had once told me, "You'd be surprised how easy it is to steal quietly, and how hard it is to trace a whisper." She was right, but whispers leave fingerprints. Over the next few weeks, we combed through emails, metadata, and contract timestamps. It was slow, painful, but then Zara found it, an email chain between Kamal, Rehan's sloppy business partner, and a pseudonymous account. That dummy address had forwarded confidential quotes I'd once sent to family-only vendors, vendors that only Mira had access to. I remember staring at the screen, my throat dry, my hands clenched, and all I could think was, she didn't think I mattered. She didn't think I was important enough for my business to mean anything. But Rehan, he knew better. I remembered that dinner, months ago. Before their engagement was official, we were sitting at a rooftop restaurant Mira had insisted on. She wore a new watch. Flashy, unnecessary. She said, "Rehan wants to branch out, start dealing with corporate clients. You should give him some pointers." I laughed softly, trying not to sound offended. I told her, "That's not how my business works." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Lena. It's not like you're running a secret military operation." That line stuck with me because my systems were tight. Every deal, every vendor, every pattern, built to be discreet, untraceable. So the only way Rehan's firm could have mimicked it was if someone handed them the blueprints, and Mira had. Zara traced it back. It wasn't even subtle. Mira had forwarded vendor contacts and internal analytics from my old shared family email. The same email I stopped using 2 years ago but never revoked access to because I trusted her. She labeled the subject lines for Rehan and, "Hope this helps, babe." I felt nauseous. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. They laughed at me at family brunches, told me I was too serious, joked about how I wore flats to meetings, said, "Lena's married to her spreadsheets," all while feeding my work to someone else. The night I got the final report, I sat alone in my apartment. No tears, no outbursts, just silence. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't call her. I wouldn't confront Rehan. I'd dismantle them, quietly, strategically, the same way they tried to dismantle me. It started with Uncle Samir, Rehan's uncle, the one who bowed to me at the wedding. He'd served in the military, but retired. Early, highly respected, watchful, unshakable. I'd heard whispers that he never trusted Rehan, said he was too slick, too eager to impress. So I reached out, not as a victim, but as a strategist. I told him everything, showed him the proof, let him read the emails, watch the data trails. He didn't say much, just stared out of his study window and muttered, "So, it's true." He turned to me and said, "You could ruin him tomorrow, but that would be mercy." I didn't reply. Because I already knew. I wasn't going to ruin him tomorrow. I was going to ruin him slowly. And Mira? She didn't even know she'd been played. She thought she was being helpful, romantic, a team player, but Rehan had used her, and now I would use them both. They say revenge is a fire, but mine wasn't. It was ice. Quiet, clear, controlled, and it started the moment I chose silence over confrontation. I didn't storm into Mira's apartment. I didn't call Rehan screaming. I didn't even warn my parents. Instead, I picked up my phone and texted one name. Zara. Zara. was my legal counsel. Calm, calculated, and surgical when it came to corporate warfare. She didn't ask why I was calling. She just said, "Talk." I laid it out piece by piece. Everything Aliyah found, the emails Mira sent, the audit rumors, the stolen vendor files. When I paused, expecting some reaction, she simply said, "Then we begin. No drama, no judgment, just execution." We started with cleanup, legal fireproofing. Anything with my name or company on it was sealed, encrypted, and locked behind new protocols. Zara coordinated with third-party auditors to quietly document the vendor data leaks. She used neutral consultants, so nothing could be traced back to me. Not yet. At the same time, she dug deeper into Kamal, Rayhan's partner. Loud, flashy, careless. Exactly the type to brag without realizing he was handing over a rope to hang himself with. She found 5 NDA violations, 2 fake invoices, and a shell company registered under his cousin's name. When she showed me the spreadsheet, I looked at her and said, "This is enough to bury them." Zara didn't blink. "We won't bury them. We'll bleed them dry, legally." But the real turning point? That came from someone I didn't expect. Uncle Samir. I had only spoken to him once, briefly, when I presented the data quietly as a concerned advisor. I never told him who I was. He listened carefully, asked sharp, military-style questions, took notes. Said he'd handle the internal review. Then, weeks later, he showed up at my office unannounced. He didn't sit, just looked at me across the room and said, "Why didn't you tell me you're Mira's sister?" I froze. For a moment, all the masks I'd worn cracked. He sighed. "It took me a while. I remembered you from a wedding years ago. You were standing alone by the buffet, helping a vendor repack plates when it started raining. You were the only one who noticed the staff didn't have umbrellas." His voice softened. "You don't need to stay in the shadows, Lena. I see you now." I didn't know what to say, but he did. He said, "Let me handle the board." And I knew what that meant. Rayhan was finished, but I didn't want that to happen in silence. I wanted them to feel the collapse, slowly, publicly, with no one to blame but themselves. So I gave Zara the green light. She leaked the vendor proof anonymously to the Ledger, a well-respected business journal, just enough to stir questions, nothing that could lead back to me. Then she tipped off the tax agency with Kamal's forged documents, again, anonymously. In parallel, Uncle Samir called a shareholder meeting. He walked in with printed ledgers, red-circled contracts, and a quiet confidence that didn't need volume. He didn't mention me. He didn't need to. Rayhan was suspended on the spot, pending legal review. Kamal was advised to cooperate or disappear, and just like that, the empire Mira thought she married into cracked, but I wasn't done. There was one more thread I needed to pull. Danish. He was an old client of mine, honest, grounded, and fiercely loyal. Rayhan had tried to poach him during the data leak, dangling shiny offers and false promises. Danish. Didn't bite. Instead, he told me, "If you ever need me to back you publicly, just say when." So I said it, and we planned a merger. Big, loud, headline-worthy. But here's the part that still makes my heart still in my chest. We timed the pool announcement. It dropped the morning of Mira's wedding, while guests were sipping mimosas, while hair was being curled and vows rehearsed. Every financial headline read the same. Danish and Kamarn merges with disruptive logistics leader, Lena Mirza. I remember walking into that venue, alone, again, but this time. They didn't laugh. They stared. Phones buzzed. Screens lit up. Whispers. Spread like wildfire. Someone muttered, "She's the Lena?" Another gasped, "That's her firm?" Mira's smile faltered. Her bridesmaids were still pretending not to notice. But Rayhan looked like he couldn't breathe. He walked up to me halfway through the reception. Face tight, jaw locked. He asked, "Was this your plan?" I looked at him, calm, composed, and said, "No, my plan was to build something real. You chose to steal it." His voice cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." I cut him off. "No, Rayhan, you don't understand the silence I was under. The years I sat through dinners where I was treated like an inconvenience, the time I gave my sister a roadmap, and she handed it to a stranger." He said nothing, just stood there, drowning in the wreckage of his own making, and that's when Uncle Samir appeared, on cue. He looked at me, nodded once, then turned to Rayhan and said, "You're lucky she only wanted clarity." I didn't stay long after that. I'd made my point, not through shouting, not through chaos, but through calm, precision, purpose. That night, as the music swelled and flash photography lit the dance floor, I stepped outside into the quiet and finally breathed. Closure doesn't always come in private. Sometimes you walk into the fire one last time, not to burn, but to remind them you don't fear the heat anymore. I arrived alone, again. Same dress code, simple, neat. No diamonds, no designer. But this time, I wasn't invisible. The music was soft, classical. Champagne flutes sparkled under chandelier light. The air buzzed with rehearsed joy until I stepped inside. Heads turned, slowly at first, then all at once. Eyes widened, whispers curled behind napkins and into phones. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just walked, measured, steady, toward the center of the room. And that's when Uncle Samir saw me. He stood from his seat, walked toward me, and with the weight of decades behind him, he bowed. A hush swept across the hall like a sudden gust of wind. He looked up and said quietly, "You didn't have to come in person." I held his gaze and replied, "Oh, I did. For closure." And almost like clockwork, Rayhan's phone buzzed, then Mira's, their mother, their father, cousins, friends, strangers. One by one, screens lit up with headlines they couldn't unsee. Danish & Co. merger finalized. Meet Lena Mirza, the silent force behind the disruption. My photo was right there, standing next to Danish. Confident, unapologetic, real. Rayhan looked down at his phone, and I saw the color drain from his face. He whispered something to Mira, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were glued to the screen, frozen, blinking as if she could erase it by sheer will. Their father asked, "What's this?" Their mother snapped, "Why is she there?" Rayhan's hands shook as he turned toward me. His voice cracked. "You planned this?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just looked at him, then at Mira. She wasn't angry. She was stunned, like someone who thought they'd been sitting on a throne only to realize it was made of sand. And then, my mother, Zara. She stared at me across the room. No words, just a tight jaw, eyes cold, not proud, not ashamed, just annoyed, like I'd ruined her perfect picture day. I met her gaze and thought, this is why I had to do it alone. Because even now, when the entire room was bowing to what I'd built, she refused to see it. And that was fine, because everyone else did. Rayhan stormed out. Mira didn't follow. She just stood there, hands by her sides, watching the world shift around her. I turned to Uncle Samir one last time. He nodded. Respect, silent and complete. And as I walked out of that hall, heels clicking against marble, no one daring to laugh, I felt something rise in my chest, not pride, not revenge, just release. For the ones who laughed when I walked in alone, I hope they remember how it feels when the tables turn and stay turned. I left before the dessert was served. No goodbyes, No final glances, no dramatic exits, just silence. The same silence they once gave me, back when I needed support, when I asked for space and got pity instead. But this silence, it carried weight. It wasn't empty. It was full of everything I'd built, endured, overcome. Of every room that once dismissed me and now couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. I needed clarity. And now, I had it. Life moved forward, as it always does. My work continued. My name whispered in boardrooms where I was once invisible. My face on covers Mira never imagined for me. And through it all, I stayed steady. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming undeniable. And to every girl who's ever been laughed at, underestimated, or silenced, I'll say this. Sometimes you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to rise so high they can't look you in the eye anymore.